Are you looking for a new MMO to put some time into in 2023? Or maybe you've never played an MMO and you don't know where to start? Well, then this video is for you. What's going on, guys? Steven with Level Up here to tell you about the different MMOs still available and still kicking in 2023, along with a couple that are soon to release. If this type of content interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel. And if at the end of this you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Without further ado, let's get into the best MMOs that you might want to try in 2023. With that being said, we're going to start with the classic, and that's World of Warcraft, no pun intended. So World of Warcraft has been around since 2004, and it now has two versions of the game. You have World of Warcraft Classic, which you can play all the way up to the recently released Wrath of the Lich King if you want a more old school MMO experience with a couple new school things thrown in just to make the game easier and flow a little bit better. Then you have the retail version, which recently launched Dragonflight, the latest expansion, and it has been pretty much accepted as one of the best expansions so far and a return to a more enjoyable World of Warcraft. It does not currently hold the same record-breaking numbers that it did in the yesteryears, but it still does have a very lively community where you're not really going to be spending any time waiting around looking for people to run dungeons with, to do raids with, to do quests with, especially because they have cross-realm things now, and so it's really not difficult to get in and find things to do in the game. There's also expansive lore, plenty of class and race combinations, and overall it is a great MMO to get into, although it can be a little overwhelming, except for in the beginning when it's actually a bit underwhelming in terms of the leveling and starting experience, which used to be one of its strengths. It's now one of its weaknesses. But if you're looking for a good MMO that has years of content in it, tons of things in terms of achievements and systems and all that sort of stuff, World of Warcraft might be the game for you. Now we'll take a twist to a relatively new game and we'll talk about New World. So New World launched to insane hype, but quickly dropped off, and it has continued to kind of hit these peaks and valleys throughout its existence of just over a year. In that time, they've released some pretty big updates. They've made massive system changes to the game that have completely changed the way that it has been played, and it has seen itself really cement itself as a game that has insane potential, but still needs to be worked on. I would say one of the biggest problems right now with the New World is simply the amount of content they put out on a regular basis. When the game first launched, it didn't have nearly enough. Now it has a pretty good amount, but it doesn't come out at a regular enough time frame for people who are actively playing the game. So within a month of new stuff being dropped, there's not really anything on the horizon. You got to wait another 2, 3, 4, 5 months. There's nothing consistent to keep you around. But if you're starting it from scratch, I recommend New World. It's a fun game. The world is beautiful. The music is top tier, and there is tons of things to do. You can definitely just run around chopping down trees. You can mine ore. You can do crafting. You can do PvP with OPR and arenas, and you can, of course, do their version of dungeons, which are called expeditions, and the mutators, which is similar to Mythic Plus from World of Warcraft, just higher level difficulty dungeons. So New World is a great one to jump into if you're starting from scratch. Those of you who are already aware of it know that if you've been in the end game for a while, there's not a lot of reasons to log in. Now we'll change gears once again to a classic. We're going to be talking about Runescape. The original Runescape was released by Jagex in 2001 and has continued to be a staple in the MMO genre since it came into existence. It is a simple and yet complicated game. So there are so many things to pursue and so many things to pour hours into to get all of your skills to 99. It is basic when it comes to graphics. So if you're looking for something like that, this isn't the game for you. But if you're looking for something that has a lot of replayability, a lot of paths to pursue, some PvP, and just a simple, cozy, and yet in-depth game, then Runescape is something you might want to check out, so long as you get past the fact that it's not a modern game in terms of the way that it looks and some of the systems they have in place, but they are systems that have proven to keep people happy and interested in the game. And we certainly couldn't have a list of MMOs worth trying in 2023 without Final Fantasy XIV making the list. This game saw a massive resurgence in the last 2 years when people were very unhappy with World of Warcraft Shadowlands. So this game is another one that allows you to do things that other MMOs may not. This is a game where you get to take one character and basically explore all of your options. You can level a character to max, then pick a different class, level that up, so on and so forth, and be able to play one character in all aspects of the game. Their end game is a little bit different. Dungeon sizes are going to vary, raids and so on and so forth aren't as large as they may be in World of Warcraft, but if you enjoy the anime style of graphics, the Final Fantasy world and lore, then Final Fantasy XIV may be a great one for you. There is tons of content, so you can definitely jump in and find find something that fits your needs. Next up, we'll be talking about Elder Scrolls Online. This is a game that is beautiful when it comes to graphics, despite the fact that it is years and years old now. It still holds up pretty well. It is in the world, of course, of the Elder Scrolls series. So if you've ever played a Morrowind, an Oblivion, a Skyrim, then this is that type of game. Now, does it feel the exact same when you're playing it? Well, no, because it is an MMO, it's not a single player RPG, and so things have to change. In order to have PvP and the combat and so on and so forth, things did have to be adjusted for the abilities, and it's still fun though. It still has deep lore, great voice acting, lots of story, consistent expansions. There's a lot in this game, and it's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of Elder Scrolls or if you just want to see what the hype is all about. And now we will talk about Guild Wars 2. So Guild Wars was released to a lot of hype because it was different in the MMO genre, and it added some unique aspects. The fact that you could only go to level 20 and that you could have multiple classes on the same character, and there were a lot of really cool things, and I think they did a really good job with the lore of the world, and the graphics for the time were actually really good. With Guild Wars 2, some of that changed and some of it didn't, but it became a game that definitely drew in a lot of people. The unique flying system, which other games are now taking in, with Dragonflight and World of Warcraft now adding flight in the way that Guild Wars does it. It has a unique combat system where you can kind of go tab target if you want, but you can also change it up and do a little more action style if you would like that as well. It's got more of a blend. So for those of you who want to try both, that may be the game for you, and they still put out new content. Now the graphics are a little outdated at this point, which most of these in the list are going to be, except for maybe New World and games that I will talk about later that are not yet released. However, Guild Wars 2 still holds up pretty well. It has good mechanics, good system, good story, and it's more of a horizontal progression game versus moving your character forward and forward and forward. You can just kind of get more things across the board. So if that's more your style, you don't want to keep chasing a higher number, then Guild Wars 2 might be for you. So the next one is going to be great if you are a Star Wars fan. That's right, we're talking about Star Wars: The Old Republic, which oftentimes feels kind of like a single player RPG because of how good the dialogue, the questing, the voice acting is in this game. And so if that's more your style, you want to play a game that you can of course play with other people. There's PvP, there's in-game dungeons, there's all the different class types that you would see in it, like Jedi, Sith, Bounty Hunter, so on and so forth. But you also want to be able to play things on your own. You want to be able to enjoy a really immersive story in the world of Star Wars. Then Star Wars: The Old Republic might be for you, and I recommend checking that out. But I will say, of course, it's a game from, you know, the earliest 2008, I think is when it was announced. It doesn't have the best graphics. And of course, they haven't really been updated that much, so take that into consideration when you go in. It's a great game to get the story out of and to experience, but again, if you're looking for high-end graphics, this game is over a decade old. And this next one is going to follow a similar vein, but it's going to be if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. Lord of the Rings Online is still kicking today with new content on the horizon, and it's another one where the graphics are not going to be fantastic, but the world is amazing. The detail in the game, being able to learn more about Middle Earth and all of its characters and history, and it's wonderful if you like Lord of the Rings. And even if you don't, there's so much lore and depth to this game. Some of the dungeons are a lot of fun. Overall, it's a really good game. It's just old, and there is still a community, and it's a dedicated community, but it will be more difficult than jumping into, let's say, World of Warcraft to find groups to get into certain content because it's a niche community, and of course, you're going to have to find a group that you can run with and experience it with. But I would recommend it if you love Lord of the Rings. Definitely jump in and give it a shot. Sticking to the theme of fandoms, we will talk about Dungeons and Dragons Online, or really Neverwinter. Now, Neverwinter is more modern and has a more characterized style of graphics, but DDO has in-depth systems, is more loyal to the Dungeons and Dragons style in terms of like how your character progresses, the gear and things like that, but it is an older game and not nearly supported in the same way as Neverwinter. Both games though are a lot of fun, very unique, and definitely drive home that Dungeons and Dragons feeling. Now the downside of something like DDO is most of it is very gated now because it's a free to play, and in order to make money, it's like if you want to go into this dungeon or access this, you're gonna have to spend some money. Some of the other games in this list have been like that too, but that's just the way it works, and you have to decide if it's worth it for you. But if you like Dungeons and Dragons, if you like the history in that and the way that they do things, the systems, the monsters, then these two games might be for you. That's DDO and Neverwinter. And from there, we're actually going to start talking about games that aren't out yet, but are drawing a lot of attention and could be some of the best games in the next couple of years. So we'll start with Throne and Liberty because that's actually expected to come out in Q2 of this year. It's getting a lot of hype. They're saying that it's going to have these massive siege battles. They're going to be smooth, very good combat that leans towards action combat, and the graphics look really, really good. And the game's not out yet, so we can't say too much, but it's one that you might want to keep your eyes on. In the same vein, we'll talk about Archeage. The first one had a great community that was very dedicated to it, and this one wants to take what that game had and improve upon it. There's going to be plenty of PvP to go around because that's something that the game did quite well, or at least some people thought so. There's going to be the caravans and things like that with trading and trying to, sabotage those sorts of things. So if you're into that, the graphics will also be pretty good. So it's a modern game, and it's going to be trying to improve upon some of the successes that they had in Archeage 1, but also fix some of those flaws. And lastly, this is one of the most anticipated games, and that is going to be Ashes of Creation. This is one where it has a lot of pressure on it. There is tons of expectation, but in a lot of these showcases they do monthly, they're living up to it, and they seem to be adjusting really, really well in terms of they hear feedback and they implement it. They explain a lot of the things, and the game, in terms of the things that they've shown us for cosmetics, has insane depth, very artistic, very cool, tons of depth to the lore. I mean, just the zones that we've seen so far have been beautiful. They're implementing weather systems and tons of things. However, I'm a little curious, or skeptical rather, about how they want to do PvP and the node system of like building communities by like owning the territories and stuff, because that's something that New World also has, and there are flaws in that, and I'm wondering if Ashes of Creation will do it any better. But that is going to wrap up my list of MMOs that you can play now or maybe looking forward to in the year 2023. So if you like this type of content, if you want to try one of them out, let me know which one you'll be experimenting with or that you currently play down below. And of course, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you give the video a thumbs up, or if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down, and make sure you subscribe to the channel either way for more of this content. Thank you all for watching, and good luck in your adventures.